My name, as I said before, is Atara Margulies. I'm the project manager for this plan. I neglected to say where I live. I actually live in Wheaton, so close by, but not quite in Silver Spring. So before we get started, I'll just have my other team members who are here introduce themselves. Not everybody's here with us today, but that's all right. So I'm here, and Melissa and John, you want to just go ahead and remind everybody who you are. Melissa and John are actually going to be the folks, hopefully, who you'll see the next time we come talk to you. And maybe in addition to myself, but they are sort of going to be leading more of the engagement effort going forward, where you guys fall into that category. So do you guys want to go ahead and just say hi one more time?
Okay. So I'm Melissa Williams. I'm a planner. I will be working on this plan specifically with the engagement and outreach. So I'll be the primary contact person for you as it relates to kind of getting the word out and acting as a liaison between the larger planning team and your community. And John?
Yeah, I'm John Marcolane. Again, I'm an urban designer. I'll be providing urban design for the plan, but focusing on the adjacent communities with Melissa.
Okay, great. And our supervisor, Leslie Howerton, couldn't be with us tonight, but she may be at a future meeting, and also the same for our teammate, Lauren Stam, who is the engagement coordinator. So when we're only 5 people on a team of like 13 working on this plan, so it's a big team, and there are a lot of staff devoted to this effort. So the last time Silver Spring was planned was in 2000. Was called the 2000 Silver Spring Central Business District Sector Plan. And that is really the plan that defined kind of what Silver Spring is like today. For anybody who lived here more than 20 years ago, it was a very, downtown Silver Spring was quite a different place. When we do these plans, we always have about a 20-year vision in mind. And that's sort of typical for sort of the system of the way Montgomery planning works. So it was time to take another look at Silver Spring. When take that look, that means we're looking at land use and zoning, housing, parks and public spaces, transportation, community resources, urban design, economic development, environment, resiliency, community identity, and historic preservation. We get a good idea of the demographics of the plan, really dig deep into understanding what is here today in Silver Spring. The last plan really envisioned sort of the vibrant downtown that we have today. Almost all the civic and community resources that we are familiar with, including the Civic Center, the plaza, the library, the fire station, these things were all recommendations in the last plan. The millions of square feet of residential development that have taken place as a result of that plan. The arts and entertainment district came out of that plan. Sort of the different sort of retail corridors that support small businesses came out of that plan. So much of what was planned at that time in one form or another has pretty much taken shape by now. So that means, it's time to open the plan up again and take a new look, try and ask the question, what is Silver Spring today and where does it want to go? We know that, the purple line, whenever it does get completed, will impact Silver Spring. And, now we have time to sort of figure out in what way is it going to impact, and if we need to respond to that, how do we respond? And then, people have asked us about the pandemic, which is a perfectly good question. So this plan was always going to happen regardless of the pandemic. We planned that a while ago, but now that we've, got arrived at this spot, many folks asked us, why are you still doing this? Don't you want to stop, sort of wait for the pandemic to be over? And actually, that would probably be kind of a worse move. I think the best way to respond to a crisis from a planning perspective, to take into account how is this impacting us, is actually to integrate that into our planning effort, right? To say, okay, we're taking the long view, but we're in a crisis right now, so we have to take the short view as part of that long view. And that is how we are approaching this plan. We're not by any means ignoring the pandemic, nor are we saying, well, let's just worry about the next few years because who knows where we are. It's always, always good to keep the long range view. That's That's kind of how things happen. And so we hope to keep both of those points of view in mind as we are moving through our planning process. So the plan boundary is really a boundary that encompasses sort of two areas of Silver Spring. So the orange is the downtown core, and that was the area that was planned in the previous plan in 2000. And that used to be known as the Central Business District. And many people don't realize this, but that term CBD is sort of outdated now. Once the zoning changed, that term kind of went away, but I know colloquially we all call it that, which is fine. In this plan, we're going to refer to it as the downtown core. And then we've got these blue blocks, as you see on the map, that are what we're calling sort of the adjacent neighborhoods. And those are residential blocks that have been included in the plan. And those were included in the plan at the request of the planning board back when we brought them the scope of work, because there is an interest of the board to explore the idea of whether or not density can change in the residential blocks that primarily right now are single family homes. And the exploration of that, which is something that's been discussed in the county for a while and actually in other places in the country and in the region. And this is the first time we're exploring it within a sector plan. And that's what sort of the expansion of the boundary was for. And the way we expanded the boundary, we had presented several options, and the option that was chosen was based around understanding what blocks are within a 10-minute walk from either the Metro Transit Center, at the Red Line, or the Purple Line station at the library, because those are the high capacity transit stations in the downtown. We are aware, obviously, that the Purple Line continues in both directions, but this is a downtown plan. So we looked at how does the addition of a high capacity rail stop in the downtown, how does that change, or does it change what happens in the blocks that are within a 10-minute walk from that station? And that's really what the exploration it will be about. So the timeline, where are we? These plans take a long time. We started in June with the approval of sort of the scope of work, and then we moved into a period where we do existing conditions analysis, where we gather all the information about all the topics I talked about earlier. What is there now, right? Understanding what our baseline is for this plan. We are wrapping that work up in the next month or so, and we will be presenting that to the community and the planning board in the early part of the new year. And then we'll move into visioning, and that should take most of the rest of 2021. And hopefully by the end, we'll have sort of a draft. And then we move into this sort of prescribed process with the planning board and then with the county council, where there's a public hearing, and then we have a long time where we have these work sessions. We work through all the different recommendations until we get to one that everyone's comfortable with at the end of the planning board process, and then we repeat that process with the county council, and then only after that does the plan get approved and adopted. So we don't really expect to be nearing the end of this until maybe the end of 2022. This plan also has several kind of added layer to it with a focus on equity. And the county council passed a racial equity bill in 2019 that charged the planning board to specifically consider racial equity and social justice impacts when preparing master sector plans. And so to do that, we have a lot of in-house efforts that are going on. We're working with some partners on the outside as well. And we've really been focused on equitable engagement. We have a 4-phase engagement process. The one that we're in right now is the listening phase, which is why we're here and why we've been talking to as many groups as possible. And actually, I don't know if anybody here follows the planning board activity closely, but this morning we presented a update on our engagement process thus far. We've had 5 months of talking to people, mostly through the screen, unfortunately, or over the phone. But we came to the planning board with an update just this morning on how we're doing with the equitable engagement and the engagement process in general. It's on the website. If people are interested, I'm happy to share the link to how to find that. It's not a long presentation, and I'm happy to answer questions about that as well. It's still ongoing, and it will be ongoing for the length of this plan. But this initial phase of just listening without us doing any actual planning is coming to a close at the end of this year, and we will move into visioning, at which point we will be listening, but working with the community to start crafting this vision for the future of Silver Spring. So we had these 2 rounds of listening sessions, public ones, very similar to what we're doing today, but open to anybody, where I give this introduction and we break into groups and talk about Silver Spring. And we have 2 more of those coming up on the 8th and the 14th. We've done office hours virtually where people just sort of drop in and talk to us about stuff. We've done a lot of targeted outreach to specific groups to make sure we are kind of getting full participation from all stakeholders in Silver Spring, and we're still going to continue working on that. There are always groups that we haven't yet reached or haven't reached enough representatives from, so we're just going to keep moving with that as the plan moves forward. Sometimes we meet people outside with masks on to talk about something specific. We're really happy to do that too. And we've got translated materials now, so we can share materials with our Silver Spring stakeholders who would rather read our stuff in Spanish and Amharic. And we've done that. So what we're doing also with this plan, which is unique for the planning department, but we hope it sets a precedent for future plans, is that we are actually tracking who we hear from for many of our large public sessions where we don't actually, we don't know who fills out our web survey. The listening sessions, if they have 40 or 50 people, it doesn't mean that we'll actually, we split into groups, so we don't all meet everybody. And so we have to have demographic surveys that go out to the folks who participate in those efforts. And we are collecting all that information, and we're beginning to weigh it, track it against the demographic information that reflects who's the demographics of the plan area, which now we've got since we're nearing our existing conditions analysis. And we presented a little bit of that comparison this morning, and we will be putting more of that on our website as we get through the next month or 2. We're doing really well with age diversity, and we're not doing great with racial diversity. And this helps us focus on how our efforts need to move, what kinds of efforts we need to make moving forward. We're doing okay in terms of diversity of where people live. But and it's appropriate that we have the most participants from downtown Silver Spring, because that is that's most of our plan area. And we have reasonable participation from the other neighborhoods that we touch. But in terms of tenure, it's still a relatively sort of transient place, the downtown, but most of the people we've talked to so far have been here for more than 20, certainly more than 10 years. And so, it helps us focus our efforts. And it's really the first time the department has collected this kind of information. So I can't tell you how we're doing compared to previous planning efforts. But one of the goals in the future is that if plans start to do this, then we have sort of a better way even to measure how we do engagement. So for this plan, we're really just measuring it against our own how we're doing, and also how we to see how we're doing throughout, and also to try and measure it against the demographic mix of our plan area, so that hopefully by the end of the plan those 2 sets of data are somewhat aligning. That's our goal. Lots of themes are arising. These are the themes in front of you, and I'll just read them if anyone doesn't see the screen. These are things that have come up again and again in the comments and when we talk to people. So diversity is something we hear a lot about. People live in Silver Spring on purpose because they love the diversity. We hear a lot of different things about density and housing, unsurprisingly. A lot of focus on the Silver Spring business community and concern for the future. There seems to be an interesting conversation shaping out of our comments that we hear about what people's perception of Silver Spring is. Is it a city? Is it a suburb? And something that is again coming up again, which has gotten really interesting for us. We kind of hope to kind of dig farther into that in the coming months. And I would say when I say we hear about transportation, a lot of our comments we get are on that theme, but they're mostly about pedestrians and bikes and parking, I would say, not about sort of a lack of transportation or transit options in Silver Spring, sort of those aspects of it. Hear a lot about parks and a lot of concern about the environment. To stay involved beyond this meeting tonight, so we have an e-newsletter, and you can go to our website, which is right here, and we can send Alan again all this information. He can send it out. We can send you guys this presentation. And the e-newsletter is great because we don't send you a lot of emails, but when you get them, they've got good updates in them, and it tells you when our engagement stuff is happening and if there's something new that's going on with the plan. We don't send it out saying it's happening today. We try and give enough advance notice with regard to that. And also when we go to the planning board, there's usually a press release that goes out after. It's not a lot of emails, but it's a good way for you kind of get a reminder about what's going on if you want to follow. Then there's a lot of other information on our website. We're going to be sort of launching an engagement hub come the early 2021 as part of our visioning process. And again, if you sign up for the newsletter, you'll find out when that gets launched. And you can always email me anytime. And we try and be responsive and get on the phone with people. If anybody in this community missed the meeting, but they really need to tell us something, that's fine. We're always here. We're always happy to get on the phone or respond to emails or call people back. This plan is for you, and we want to make sure everyone is engaged to the extent that they can be. So these are the sort of open-ended questions we are asking folks throughout this listening phase. This does not mean we have to only talk about this stuff. We are here so you guys can let us know anything you want us to know about Silver Spring. But the sort of stuff we're asking up front is to find out, what do people like about Silver Spring? What do you want to see sort of preserved in this community in one form or another? But what do you think needs to change? What are you worried about when it comes to the future of Silver Spring? And, we've been asking people at the end of these sessions, either put it in the chat or offer a comment, sort of to say, like, what would define success for this plan for you? And that can, be a range of things. One of the reasons why we ask the open-ended questions early on like this is because we've spoken to about almost 500 people so far by this point. We started doing this in July with the engagement. When we come to a group with something to react to, then you know what you're going to hear. You know what you're going to hear about, at least, right? When you come with the open-ended questions, you never know what people are going to say. And the great thing is so many, like the themes and sort of the kinds of answers we're hearing from people, from even from a diverse crowd of respondents, they really start to point to the key issues. So it lets sort of the key issues rise to the top in a way. And so while we had some ideas about what we thought might be important to the various communities in Silver Spring, it's been really sort of wonderful and fascinating to see those things kind of come together and come to the fore from these types of conversations. So I can either leave these up or I'll leave it up for a bit. So Alan, that's sort of that's it for us. So I don't know how you guys usually run your conversations on Zoom. We're happy to take anyone's questions, comments. If people want to type in the chat because they're more comfortable that way, that's completely fine.
Well, let me start off with a question, and then there are some questions in the
I see. I just opened the chat box. Okay, great.
My first question is, do you consider Park Hills live an adjacent community? And if it is, how do you think the downtown aspects of the plan are going to affect the communities which are farther out?
So that's a great question. So just maybe, and I will be clear about it. So when we do a master plan, there's kind of two areas that we study. So there's if any properties that are inside that plan boundary that I showed, those are the only properties we can make any recommendations about. And those are the only properties who are sort of under review in terms of a possible zoning change. Just because you're in the plan doesn't mean your zoning changes. But if you're not inside that boundary, then during this plan process, we cannot make any change to the zoning of your property. So I think most of Park Hills is like just outside the boundary. When I looked up on your website to understand where the boundary of your neighborhood is or where you guys consider it to be. So I think for the most part, you're not inside the boundary. But obviously there's sort of a study area, which from our perspective is much larger. It's kind of everything under Riumberto's jurisdiction by the Regional Services Center is sort of our study area. And what that means is we look at that entire area to understand context for the plan. We look at kind of demographic information, and we actually do some of our traffic and transportation counts, farther out to understand, how things impact. We do look at other kind of development patterns and things like that, but it's for context. We can't actually change anything or impact anything directly in there. So, however, to that end, Silver Spring, the downtown Silver Spring in particular, right? It's a destination. People come to downtown Silver Spring and use downtown Silver Spring from all over East County and even beyond. So anyone who lives in and around downtown Silver Spring is for sure, we are considering a major stakeholder in this plan, because you are the people who make downtown Silver Spring a downtown, right? I mean, that's the people who come to that downtown for all the things that it offers, are the folks primarily who live in the sort of immediate and then slightly farther out, right, neighborhoods that surround the downtown. So I think we are looking at all of those neighborhoods right around the downtown as definitely key stakeholders in the plan, because hearing what you think about downtown Silver Spring and the neighborhoods that are between you and downtown Silver Spring is important. But you guys should realize that if your property is not in the boundary, then there's none of the sort of zoning related changes that may come out of this plan would affect your particular property.
Thank you for that answer. So Nina's put a question in the chat about the impact of the Silver Spring downtown and adjacent communities plans on schools.
Mm-hmm.
I wonder if you could address some of the school capacity issues and how they might be affected by the plan vision.
Sure, and that's something that we do address. We have a planner who actually, her focus is working with MCPS directly. I think she meets with them almost every week to understand their, obviously to understand everything that's proposed in their system in terms of capacity and projections. MCPS does the projections, but we look at how that impacts the plan area by analyzing what clusters are draw from, what clusters the plan area is in, and I think in Silver Spring it's in 3 clusters, and she's analyzing all of that, and that does. We do sometimes make recommendations that go towards that, to that end, and we do work closely with MCPS. Obviously, we're not quite in charge of we make recommendations and we work very closely with them. So it takes into account the fact that the schools are, as she says, are already kind of full, and so we are looking at that, and that does drive. And we do we pull the student generation rates, and we try and work with MCPS's data to make projections about that. And there will be a whole section on that in our existing conditions analysis in early 2021 for those who are interested in that topic specifically.
So thanks for the answer. So let me throw it open to, I've got lots of questions, but I want other people to ask questions as well. Who's got some questions? Right now I can just see Tara's screen.
I can stop that.
Sharing.
There we go.
There we go. Anybody else have any other questions that they want to ask? Well, don't be shy. I know this group. Let me ask you then, Carol, you have a question?
No, not right now.
Okay. So I have a question about the purple line. So the purple line is really impactful for the Silver Spring downtown plan. Then it comes down Wayne Avenue. Are any of the plan's recommendations, are they likely to affect some of the communities that are farther down the alignment?
So I don't know what our recommendations will be yet, but I would say that we are, right now what we think we're going to be looking at, and again, we're going to work on this with the community, and we can identify what, I would like to hear what people are worried about with regard to the purple line, because that's going to affect what we look at. But one of the things we're concerned about is how it's going to impact Bonifant Street, right where it comes in downtown. Because it's running on Bonifant before it turns up and goes onto Wayne, and it's kind of so there's a question just like, what is it going to do to that street? What is it going to be good or bad for that street, right? And what's it going to mean? And I think there is a concern that the purple line is going to come, and while it might be great for Silver Spring in some ways, right, it's going to connect Silver Spring in a way that it's never been connected before. I think the connection to College Park might be really exciting. But at the same time, sometimes when a place gets better connected, then some aspects of that place get even more expensive. And that's a concern. And we've heard that concern a lot. A lot of people are afraid there's going to be displacement of businesses. I think the construction is already displaced even before the pandemic. And so that's one of the things that has come up a lot in conversations that we've had. We anticipated that as something to be concerned about. And so I think right now, those are the sorts of impacts we're looking to better understand what those impacts will be and how can the sector plan contribute in a positive way towards Silver Spring and try and capture the good from the purple line and not the negative. And yes, Montgomery College is actually, it's partially in the boundary. The part of it that's in Tacoma Park is in Tacoma Park. And that's a different master plan boundary. And the part that's in Silver Spring, which is really like the arts part that's on the corner there at Georgia, that's inside. We actually we've met with the facilities folks from Montgomery College, and we had one meeting so far with a group of students, and we're planning to meet even more with those students and hopefully a broader group of those students to understand that the students, want to talk a lot about kind of getting to their campus and how they get to the campus and the kind of some pedestrian connections that are missing for them. And that was really helpful for us to hear. I see a question about broad trends and changes. I know you guys don't want to hear this, but we are so early in the process that we don't foresee anything yet. We would want you guys to work with us starting in March to help us, envision like, what is that? What is it that you see? I mean, I think sometimes with sector plans, obviously there's a degree, there's always, some things are driven by the outside forces, but when you take a 20-year master plan process, what you sort of want to do is you want to figure out where you want to be, and you figure out what can you recommend to help encourage those things happen eventually. And if we look back at what the 2000 plan did for Silver Spring, I mean, that transformation was tremendous. And some things that they proposed in there happened earlier than others. And some things that they thought were kind of a pipe dream happened earlier than anybody anticipated, because it's hard in 1998 when they started writing the plan to anticipate what Silver Spring would look like in 2012. So similarly, but they had a long-term vision that seemed very pie in the sky at that time. And we've pretty much realized it. So I don't know if our plan will be sort of take as much of a visionary leap or if it will be more about strengthening. I mean, my hunch is that it will be a lot about taking the things that people love about Silver Spring now and trying to hold on to those even as Silver Spring grows, but then taking the things that people are not happy with and trying to improve those.
Mary, do you have a question?
Yeah, it suddenly occurred to me that now that we are opening up a line from the University of Maryland Center, Student Center, straight to downtown Silver Spring, we are going to be the town that all of those students are going to come to. And I think that has to be seen in part of the plan. The whole region, especially DC, is locked up after midnight. The whole area has always needed a place that can be more alive and more jumping. And I think you're going to have a huge influx of college students that you might not have been thinking of yet.
Cheryl?
Good point.
You're muted, Cheryl.
Muted.
Okay.
There you go.
All right, I got it. I've lived here in Silver Spring a long time, and it used to be I could go anywhere at any time of day, always find a parking place, never run into any traffic. And that has, all the things that I love about what have happened to Silver Spring, that's not one of them. So I'm just wondering, what impact that has, looking at street traffic and the lack of street parking is getting worse and worse. What are you going to do about that, or what are you thinking about that issue?
So we've heard comments in all directions, about the parking in Silver Spring. And I think it's one of those things that we're going to sit down and look at all the things we've heard. And I think it has a lot to do with where we decide to go with the vision. It goes to that question of what's the identity of Silver Spring? Is it a city or is it a suburb? And what are the things where do we want it to be? And not just what is it today, but what's the long-term vision? And then trying to respond to what sort of environment we want there to be for people versus cars versus bikes, and how do all those systems work together. And that's part of what, I think what we're going to be talking about. But street parking is an issue. Parking in general in Silver Spring, as always, we have heard a lot about that topic, I would say,
Yeah,
both directions.
Deborah?
yes, thank you. I missed the first part of your discussion, so I apologize if anything was said about this. You asked about a vision. Is it a city? Is it a suburb? I think what I like is that it's kind of a suburb on the edge of something to do that is sort of city-like, but I really don't want to live in a city. An urban sort of environment. And with that, though, I think what we enjoy is walkable spaces. And I think that's what's really nice about downtown. But as we get more crowded, walkable has to be really envisioned properly so it's safe. So there are things to do along the walking path that make people attracted. And I thought the comment about people coming from College Park to Silver Spring is a really important concern, because on the one hand, it will be great for business. It'll make the place lively, but it really does change how something feels when you have a lot of college students running around at night, And so I think that, there may be an area of Silver Spring that could be more suited to the college side of interaction, and another area of Silver Spring that's more like, yeah, that's where kind of, the married couples and their kids hang out, or whatever. So I think that could be, thought about in that planning aspect to make it a little bit enjoyable for everyone, but without making it just, here's this one urban conglomeration of everybody goes there, no one can fit. And I think we're getting to no one can fit. We're getting tight, very tight in parking, as people have said, in going up taller, which certainly allows for more growth, but also has its consequences like schools and everything else that comes with it. So that's kind of my comment about thinking about things.
Thank you. And yes, I appreciate people sharing comments. You don't have to ask us questions.
Nina, go, and then Gary. Nina? Nina, we can't hear you though for
Hear you.
something. So we're going to work on that. And Gary, you go next.
Yeah, one reason I moved to Silver Spring, 31, 32, whatever years ago, was combination of a really nice place to live that's walkable, et cetera, plus affordability. And if there's a lot of new heavy duty development, I think whatever's left of the affordability is going to disappear. And a lot of the affordability is part of the reason why we do have a pretty diverse neighborhood now. And so that it may just, turn into another Bethesda.
Thank you for sharing.
Tina?
You have to unmute.
Hi. I wanted to say that I really appreciate the diversity of Silver Spring, and I hope that whatever the plan does will support that and maybe even expand it, because I think we have a lot of good things here, and I think it would be nice for us to share them with others. I'm also a big transit advocate. I'm a big fan of the Purple Line, but I think it's important for us to figure out, and that's the planning, I mean, part of the planning department's role, but figure out how we can get more people comfortably into Silver Spring in a wide range of incomes. I don't want to be like Bethesda. I like the variety we have in Silver Spring. And I think we need to accept that and put that down here. Because if we don't, and we try to close ourselves off, then we're forcing people to move
I can't.
farther and farther out. And we'll just get the benefit of all their traffic and consequently greenhouse gas emissions. So I'd like it to be walkable, bikeable, transit oriented, and welcoming to more people.
Okay.
Hi, this is Nina. Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, because I joined from my phone. My comments are kind of build on what everybody else had said but I feel like instead of us becoming like Bethesda, I feel like what's been happening, I've been here for 20 years now, that all the projects that the Silver Spring has grown so much and has changed so much, and a lot of it is in good ways, but a lot of it is with, density, et cetera, et cetera. All the schools are overcrowded, and there is I don't see what the solution is to that, especially since now the Montgomery County Planning Board has chosen not to make the changes to the Sligo Creek Elementary School and Sims Middle School, because they're putting those resources at another school. And I feel like Silver Spring has become almost like a dumping ground for everything, that it has lost its small town feel that it used to have about 20 years ago. And like Bethesda and Tacoma Park have maintained that, whereas Silver Spring has just become a conglomeration of high-rise buildings where it's great for the growth and downtown density. But again, I'm coming back to schools. Where will all the kids who are going to be in those high rises, because you can't assume it's just going to be single people who are moving into the new apartments. Where will they fit? There's literally all the schools are overcrowded. So
Before you answer that, Tara, is it helpful to explain? I know that the people at the planning department are also involved in this Thrive 2050 general plan exercise. Can you explain how the sector plan fits into the general plan? You had mentioned zoning early on and said that in our neighborhood, we wouldn't be affected by any zoning changes in the downtown area. But I understand that with the general plan, there's some thought that's being given to sort of countywide changes in zoning that might affect houses like the ones that we have in our neighborhood.
So actually, I'm going to let Melissa take the general plan question if she's ready to talk.
I was going to say, great. Can you repeat that last part for me? Because I was taking notes from the last question.
So my question was, the sector plan fits into the general plan. Tara said that zoning in our neighborhood would not be affected by any recommended zoning changes, prospective zoning changes in the Silver Spring downtown and adjacent plan.
Okay.
I'm confused about how the sector plan and general plan fit together.
Got it. Okay.
To Nina's question, as you focus on downtown Silver Spring area, and you recommend probably more density, how is that going to affect the schools, which are already busting beyond capacity right now?
Okay. So the general plan effort is essentially, so what the general plan is kind of the overarching guidance for the entire county. So it makes really high level recommendations. It doesn't drill down to the neighborhood specifically. It looks at kind of, when you were thinking about trends, it looks at what do we think is trending over the next 20 to 30 years. And so those are the things that the general plan might say. It may say something like, we need to reduce the carbon footprint. That's a very general recommendation. It may say we need to reduce the carbon footprint by this percentage by this year. It may also say something to the effect of, we need more housing as there's regional growth, and Montgomery County needs to provide additional housing in order to support their portion of this regional growth. So once again, very high level, doesn't always have a number attached to it. And they would do that for every single category, the same way that you see the categories in a sector plan or a master plan. What happens when you get to the sector plan process, or what we're doing here, is that we take our, we adopt the tone of the general plan. So we kind of take our guidance from the plan. So if that plan says that the focus right now should be on the environment or transportation recommendations or housing, then those are things that we kind of roll into the goals that we set for this plan. And so what ends up happening is that we take those goals and then we get more specific. So that's when we drill down to the neighborhood level and the block level. And so that's when you start to see really specific recommendations about parcels, projects, parks, stream valleys, very, very specific. And the point that Atara was making about if you are not included in the sector plan boundary, a lot of people get confused about the sector plan. So there are two parts in the sector plan or master plan process. There's the actual master plan, which only makes recommendations. Those are the things that the plan says, we recommend that you do this, X or Y or Z. That gets approved and adopted. So that means that we've approved and adopted the recommendations. What happens to change the actual zoning on the ground is a completely separate process called a sectional map amendment. And that's what changes the zoning. So that's when they go in and they look at the recommendations that the plan made and they legally change the zoning for the parcels. So because if a community or a piece of land is not within the boundary that was established by the sector plan or the master plan effort, their zoning cannot be changed as a part of the sectional map amendment. And so that's how those two things are clearly delineated. So if you're not within the boundary, we can't change your zoning because that's kind of not the way it works. It would have to be a separate process that is not a part of the sectional map amendment. Now, as it relates to the impact on schools, this gets back to the point that Atara made earlier. What happens, and I've done at this point, 5 plans, maybe 5 master plans. And this is a question that comes up in every single plan. It's an issue that comes up in every single plan because Montgomery County has really great schools. It's one of the features that attracts people to move into the county. That's one of the reasons that the county is growing, is because of the school system and the proximity to DC, of course. And so what ends up happening is that we have to balance, and there's a process where the development and the capacity are balanced against kind of what the seats that are available in schools. And it's very complicated. It's not something that's always the same. It's a balancing act that works between MCPS and the planning board, where they essentially look at, this is how much capacity is available, and they go by number of seats. And then they think about, here's the development, how many seats, how many students are going to be generated by this development. And then there's a calculation that not only looks at single family housing and multifamily housing, but they even break it down further, and they have mid-rise housing and high-rise housing because they all have different student generation rates. And they estimate how many children will be, how many seats will be needed for children that are generated by the development that's recommended by the plan. And they take all of that information and then it's given to MCPS, and then MCPS has to take that information and they start to think about what changes need to happen to schools. Is it a matter of increasing the size of the school? Is it something that as simple as kind of moving some programs around, or does it require an entirely new school site? And if we hear from MCPS that the numbers that you've come up with require a new school site, then that becomes the recommendation that Atara was talking about. That's when we have to say, okay, we're looking at a sector plan or a master plan effort that's going to require that a new school site be identified. And we then have to identify that as a part of the plan. And so it's a very fluid conversation and it moves a lot. And so what I tell people that if you're concerned about the schools and the school capacity, continue to raise this question at each state, at each kind of, at each opportunity for you to reach out to the staff, because what happens is we can give you the information as we get it, because the information that we give you today isn't going to be, it's not going to be incredibly useful because we don't know the development capacity that is being recommended. And so what happens is we have to have a development recommendation in order for MCPS to tell us what's the impact to the schools. So that was a lot of information. I hope it makes sense. But what I can tell you is that there is a planner that is specifically responsible for that effort. And that is something that as we move through the process, that's a conversation that may be its own kind of meeting that, depending on how many people are interested in it and how much information we actually will have to be able to give you.
So that means that what you're doing for the Silver Spring downtown and adjacent communities plan will have no immediate impact or soon impact on the overcrowding in the schools that I think that Nina was describing, where they're already over capacity, 20%, 25%. If your plan doesn't come out, gets finalized until, the end of 2022,
Right.
and there's no relief that comes from your process. And that means we're working on the MCPS County Council tract as opposed to the planning board.
That's right. Because our plan, until we're approved and adopted and kind of the sectional map amendment and all of that stuff is done, we're technically not really a part of the pipeline. So we have to go through our process and then they put us into the pipeline of the needs or, impact to capacity for the schools.
Right.
And so we have conversations with them. We let them know what we're doing, but kind of the official, the formal, you need this many seats or you are providing funds to improve the schools, because that's something that also happens as a part of development. You can have a developer that has to provide some funds to alleviate their impact to the schools. And so that's something else that happens. And as I was saying, it's a really it's a very broad conversation that goes across several different departments. And it's a moving item, but I would tell you, continue to bring it up. I know that it's important. It's something that we are accustomed to having to deal with at every step of the way. And if it's something that you think requires kind of its own meeting, once we're further along, I think that's something that we could probably work on.
So what it brings to my mind right now is, since we've had the plan since 2000, that was the last one, last sector plan, is what did the planning board get wrong that has led to the overcrowding of the Silver Spring schools that we're looking at now? Why is Woodland Elementary and Highland and Sims and East Silver Spring, why are they all busting at the seams? What was in the planning process for the last 20 years that got us to the position we are now?
And I can tell you that that's not an answer we have right now, but it's a valid question. And that may be something. What we typically do with the master plans is they have an appendice. And so the appendix typically answers those very questions, like, this is what was recommended by the previous planning effort. This is what happened as a result. And in some cases, they will say, because of X, Y happened. And this plan is responding to that by doing, A or B or C. And so I always tell people it's the section of the plan that's not very sexy because it's the numbers and the text and the research, but that's where you typically would find the answer to that question that you're asking. It's not something that we would typically put in the plan, but it is something that you can typically find in the appendix, which for if you were to go back and look at all of the plans that we've done, they have an appendix that tells you this is how we came up with that recommendation. And it has all those numbers and all of the research that they did to come up with the recommendations.
So I would ask you to look to that if the past is prologue. It may be that your recommendations for the next 20-year plan, they need to be bigger than what you might normally conceptualize. They may need to be 50% bigger because 20 years from now, we don't want the schools to be, I expect to be here 20 years from now. I don't know about 50 years from now, but it would be,
But
we're going to need some technological change for that.
okay.
But you need to think big, and that sort of raises this question: I think I might have asked Atara in your group this the last question. Do you look around to other communities for best practices? A lot of people are really down on Bethesda. I sort of like the Bethesda, but I really like Ballston and Clarendon. I like the Northern Virginia sort of downtown areas, which are right adjacent to, apartment buildings, garden apartments, and single family housing. Do you look at other communities to see what kind of things you could recommend for Silver Spring downtown?
We do. We actually do. We do precedent research in that way, certainly. And it's actually helpful if people, and you're not the only, other people have said to us like, oh, we really like this place. And we've said to people, the best thing to give us is like specific examples of things that you like. Like that's really helpful. So when people say to us, we need a park like X park in wherever, that's great because that gives us a clear idea of what people like, as opposed to when people say like we need more parks. So that's a broad statement, which we might agree with, but we need sometimes, the more specific is the better. So saying, there are things I like about Clarendon is that, that's helpful in terms of input to get from the community. So we do look at precedents, particularly when if we are looking to, if during the visioning process, we want to figure out how to recommend or how to envision something that maybe we don't already have successfully elsewhere in Montgomery County, then of course we'll look elsewhere to other precedents of places to understand how that's, how that's been done and what's been successful. That's kind of a typical part of planning. I think we all of us do that as a regular part of our job. And I would say, actually, Alan, just to go back to your question about, what did they do wrong in the 2000 plan? It's always, the planning is always like taking your best guess. And sometimes the methods of modeling and the methods of projection do change over time. I mean, I don't actually think that we do things a lot differently now than we did in the late 90s in terms of planning processes in the department. And I'd be more than, definitely, I think for this plan, it will probably be useful during visioning to have our schools planner have a session where she can explain to people the process that Melissa actually explained very eloquently, but and go even into more depth for those who want it. We're kind of, when we get to that part of the process, we have a team full of specialized planners who are really happy to get into the weeds with the folks who want to get into the weeds on any number of kind of very specific issues. And actually our schools planner is actually, she lives in Woodside. So she's right from this area. She's a parent, so she's fully aware of what the issues are in MCPS, and this is her job. So she's like really well qualified to give those who are interested a super deep dive on this. And I think when we get to the point where she has something to show you, so she can say, let's look at these numbers together, let's explain how we got here, let's take a look at how this works. During visioning, we can make that happen.
Any other questions? I've got another one. While you guys raise your hand, I can see most of you. You can.
So actually, Alan, there's another one in the chat that we never got to, and I want to make sure we get back to it.
Riamberto, did you have something to say too?
Just a quick point to affirm what's been said before regarding the 2000 plan. I don't know if the plan got, quote, anything wrong. I think when you do a plan, you go with the science of the moment, and no one could have foreseen the shift in office, for example, and the different use of office, and no one could have foreseen how Silver Spring, as Brian Folger says, created its own demand for housing that was beyond what anyone actually expected. And so it's looking towards the future through planning, the nimbleness of plans may be something that we want to ensure that is part, and it's part of the planning profession, right? Is we're all learning, and so the nimbleness of future plans to reflect the changing situations of everything from technology of offices to what defines schools and how the school will be done in 5 to 10 years. So it's, I don't know that it's particularly that the quote 2000 plan got anything wrong. It's just that looking forward, I think we want the plans to be more nimble to reflect the realities. Just want to say that.
So on those lines, Elizabeth, go ahead, please. You are muted. You are muted. You're still muted.
I did a lot of research in providing comments for the I-495, I-270 recommendation, and particularly on the environmental area. And we talked about the pandemic and making sure that that is something that we anticipate and plan for. We're also anticipating in January a change in administration and the appointment of a climate czar and probably much more stringent environmental regulations with regard to greenhouse gases requirements and so forth. And I think Silver Spring, for many reasons, has an opportunity to plan around a theme of green planning. We had a green plan that accompanied our master plan. And I see no reason why Silver Spring couldn't combine those two things. You mentioned environment being one of the themes that was very important to, I'm assuming, all the multitude of people here from all walks of life, from all the different countries. The other thing is we have an incredible resource, natural resource base of trees, tree canopy, Sligo Creek Park as a watershed that is part of the National Wetlands Inventory and a critical piece of an interconnected part of this environmental watershed network for the Anacostia River, which flows into the Potomac. And I think that all of these, the city itself is actually has heat index problems, and the county has tried to address those by planting more street trees, but it still has many issues. And so there's this dichotomy of the neighborhoods having mature trees and tree canopy that we can't afford to lose any more of. The Purple Line has taken too many. And I want to leave with that notion that Silver Spring has an opportunity to plan around a green theme. Rachel Carson was one of our most famous residents who crafted Silent Spring while she lived here. And not to, make more of that than is appropriate, but we have a great opportunity to move forward with the notion that preserving the environment is preserving and taking care of environmental justice issues and the environmental protection that I think everyone wants as well. And I'll stop with that.
Thank you very much for sharing. all of those issues are actually right at the forefront of what our team is focused on. We have a really wonderful environmental planner on our team who would have loved to connect with you and talk about all these issues with you. She's extremely passionate about her work. Actually, we will be presenting as part of our existing conditions work some sort of new database heat island analysis that she has done for downtown Silver Spring. In terms of taking sort of measurings and drawing conclusions about trees and shade and materials and how all of these things really make a difference. And we had the opportunity to borrow some really expensive equipment that we don't have access to usually to do that analysis, and that was very. It's been great. Also, a new kind of tree analysis we've done this time around, where they took a subset of the trees to sort of get a handle on it and analyzed through taking a whole bunch of metrics that you can then come to an estimate of sort of how that tree contributes to the environment in terms of carbon sequestration, in terms of, a bunch of other metrics. And we're going to present all of that. So we kind of have some new kind of database ways of capturing, why those street trees are important and why big ones do more work than small ones, and all of that. We've also heard plenty from your neighbors in the other adjacent communities about the mature tree canopy and green cover generally in the neighborhoods. We hear all of that. I will say that I think when the team, one of the first things we did, excuse me, in the beginning of the plan is we sat down with the 2000 plan and we read all the recommendations that were made. And then we had lots of discussions about them, and to understand what came to fruition, what didn't, why do we think certain things didn't happen, what recommendations, some things that get recommended 20 years ago, then you look at them with your with your glasses of hindsight on, and you say, oh well, that never would have happened anyway, because that's not how we do things now. But then some things you think like, oh, that was a really good idea. Why? Let's figure out why that didn't happen if it's still relevant. So some of the goals they set totally happened. The transit center was a goal. Well, it's here and it's operating the way it sort of was intended. But there was a goal of a green downtown, and most of us read the plan and said, well, that really didn't happen. And that's why 10 years in, actually John on our team worked on the green space plan for downtown Silver Spring, which was intended to say, hey, that green downtown didn't happen. Let's try and bring that to the fore. And I think for the most part, our team still feels like it didn't, those projects, many of them, I think 2 of them maybe got realized, but some of them are still on the boards. So maybe they'll still get there, but it's definitely still, I think our team's broad response was that was kind of an under-realized part. I agree. So that we're going to keep that theme and keep trying to pull it up. And I think we have some really exciting analysis tools now that are really able to translate into kind of real clear messages about what's important. And to the same vein, right, in the late 90s the environment is like barely mentioned in the plan, and we understand why that is, but that's not that's not how we feel about it. That's not how we do it now. And now it's like it's not even just a box, it's an underlying theme that has to relate to all the topics we look at. We have to have that hat, it's a hat we have on throughout the entire, a lens that we look through all the disciplines with. So
you have a process. Second,
Could I just make one closing after your comments? I think the critical thing is that Silver Spring is blessed with mature trees and tree canopy that's interconnected. And there is a tipping point that if you remove too much of that, you lose the value that you're talking about, and that Silver Spring contributes as its portion of compliance with what is required. But more than that, contributing to the values of what people appreciate and why we live in Silver Spring, and why this place is so special. Someone photographed a bald eagle a block from my house across from Erder's store in March. And about 3.5 or 4 weeks ago, I saw that bald eagle on Pershing Street, 3 blocks from downtown Silver Spring. We have a bald eagle living a few blocks from downtown Silver Spring, probably fishing in the Sligo Creek watershed. Now, if that is not something tremendously special about Silver Spring, I don't know what is. But it's thrilling to see that kind of wildlife, and we should be celebrating that.
So I wanted to associate my remarks with everything that Elizabeth said before. So environment's a really high priority because of all the mature trees and our custodianship of Sligo Creek. And so we want that to be a very high priority. One of the questions I didn't get to ask when I was sitting in the call with East Silver Spring is, do you expect that this plan, at the end of this plan, is going to recommend more green space? I mean, can we assume that there's not going to be no reduction of of parks in particular? Are we going to have more park acreage at the end of this process or less park acreage? I keep thinking about how vulnerable Jessup Blair Park seems to be. It's just hanging out there by Montgomery College, but it's close enough to Metro to be a pretty desirable spot for some retail and residential. And will the parks be protected in this process?
Yes, we are interested in figuring out how to improve Jessup Blair Park to make it more of an asset that people are interested in going to. I think it has a tough location in that it's bordered by a college and then a metro rail in terms of access. But I think we are talking to people about that park a lot. Actually, we've been interested to hear actually from some of the folks in DC are the ones who use that park, I think more also than the Silver Spring folks from our discussion so far. And we've heard a lot from them about it. We heard about from the Montgomery College students about it. Montgomery College did not indicate to us that they have really any interest in taking any part of that at all. They're hoping that it can be a better place to hang out. A lot of them use it. So we've heard a lot about how it's underutilized, and we realize that, and we want to sort of figure out what we can do about that. What do we need to do about that? And the Parks Department's kind of really focused on that. What's interesting about Silver Spring, and we'll go through this again, our parks planner, will present this, is that, the majority of the green space in downtown Silver Spring isn't owned by parks. And that is unique to a downtown. I mean, I think it's similar in other downtowns. I mean, Bethesda has a similar problem. And so, you have a lot of spaces that are technically green and publicly accessible, but they don't feel that way. People don't always perceive them that way. And we think that is one of the challenges in the downtowns in this county. And we are going to be trying to figure out how to leverage that, how to transform that, how to get closer to the notion of a green downtown. Everyone has told us there's not enough parks, there's not enough accessible green space. We have heard the same thing from everybody. We knew it going into the plan. And so it's a goal to figure out how to improve that, certainly.
Yeah, I was going to say, John had actually done some work. There was like a green plan for downtown Silver Spring. So maybe he could weigh in on what some of the findings were in that process.
You're it, John.
Uh-oh.
John. Here we go.
Oh, okay, there we go.
No, when we did that plan, we found that it was motivated by the fact that Silver Spring was growing so fast. And we were concerned, the planning board is concerned that it would outgrow the parks, and all the available sites would disappear before new parks could be built. So we came up with a recommendation of 5 parks or open spaces, and 2 or 3 of those have been approved. One got built. It's Studio Plaza. It's I'm not sure how successful that one was or is. You guys can probably tell me if you've been there. But there are other parks that have been approved. One's over the Blairs, the other one's at Falklands. So yeah, there is definitely a need for open space, and we need to update that plan. We need to take those findings from that green space plan and bring them forward in this plan. We also need to, I think, identify more open spaces. Because yes, there's definitely a need for green usable parks, more than half acre in size. A lot of the parks, a lot of the open spaces, they're publicly owned or probably owned public spaces, POPs. They're too small. They tend to be less than half an acre, probably a quarter acre. And so there's a need for not only more space, but more larger spaces.
The pocket parks aren't really very useful. So
Right.
what I was going to ask you, Atara, is, and I can ask John now, is the development of this green space plan going forward at the same time as the downtown Silver Spring plan is?
This green space plan was done a while ago. John can speak to the timing.
We did that in 2010. It was supposed to be a fill in a weak spot in the sector plan that was mentioned with the green downtown. Atara mentioned that that was intended to fill that weak spot. And what I tried to say earlier was this plan that we're doing now will attempt to address the need for green space. So we are looking at that in this plan. So
right, and we'll look at like John said, they identified 5 projects in that 2010 plan. One of them was built, but again, it's a private development that provided that green space at the Thayer apartments. And then there's at least 1 or 2 others that was approved, but hasn't been built yet. So we will look at those again as part of this plan and look at it anew. And actually we've got our parks planner has a totally, again, a new, not so new, a tool that the Parks Department developed in 2018. And she's going to explain all of that when we get to existing conditions, that again takes a totally different way, a database analysis of actually looking at what green space is there in Silver Spring. Both she doesn't care how it was brought to the fore, meaning whether it's a Parks Department, MNC, PPC maintained park, or whether it's a private pocket park that is publicly accessible but was developed with a private development, like say the public space at Discovery or Old Discovery Building, as an example, right? That's a big green space, but it's technically publicly accessible. Do people feel that it is a separate question. So she's looking at all of those and has a whole system, which it's really fascinating, of how to identify, trying to attribute, identify attributes of those spaces, identify like the attributes that we all wish parks had, as Parks Department kind of defines it. They did a long engagement process to arrive at that. And then says, okay, what do we have in downtown Silver Spring in this plan? Where do we have the kinds of parks that we need? Where are we missing certain things? And her analysis, coupled with our engagement and what we hear about and people's reactions to all those open spaces, all of that is going to come together and help us identify where do we need more green space, what type of green space does it need to be, what are the things that need to be in those green spaces, how do they need to feel, like what programming, if any, do they need to provide, and then we will make recommendations about where those should be in the plan. But again, that's us setting the vision and hoping that we can create a framework that will allow for those things to happen down the line.
So my question really was, well, 2 things. Part of it's a process. I wonder how siloed this is. When you hear somebody like Elizabeth or me say trees are really important, we're concerned about, the removal of mature shade trees, we need more green space. Do you pass these nuggets of community concern on to other people in planning who are working on similar projects at the same time? So
yes. First, certainly, like I said, we're the representatives of a team of, 12 people who are doing this particular plan. So we take when we do the larger listening sessions, the entire team participates because we're having a 50, 60 person session and breaking up into groups. But when we do these smaller sort of meetings, the engagement team goes and we take the notes and we, report back to our larger team once a week, and we give and we sort of flag like these meetings, these were the highlights, these were the issues that came up. You guys are probably, people number 250 and 251 to bring up those comments to us at this point in time. It is, we know it was important, but it helps to hear it over and over again. We're actually, if you look at our website, we've got a section where we're updating every few months because it takes a lot to get to update it. But we are actually, sort of sorting comments that we get by topic. So you can sort of get a sense of like, over 40% of our comments were on this topic. I mean, we kind of have a bar chart that kind of gives you a sense of what people want to tell us about, right? So everything we hear in these meetings gets pushed back to our team. And those are the people who are going to be working, designing this plan, right, and coming up with what's important. But what we presented this morning, and I encourage anybody who's interested to really, it was a short presentation. It was only a half an hour, and all the planning board presentations are on the web. But again, I'm happy to just send you guys the link to it. We highlighted all of the themes that we've heard so far. And we actually gave quotes from people in the community, like, so maybe the slide for each topic had like, I don't know, anywhere between 6 to 10 quotes about the topic. And we tried to pick quotes that were representative of what we've heard broadly. And there was a quote about 100-year mature tree canopy in the neighborhoods. And there was a quote about, trying to make sure that everything we're doing is in alignment with the county's greenhouse gas emissions goal. And the, our environmental planner is actually a member of the climate action team, as are many of our colleagues. They're on some of the working groups for that. So that's going to impact, they'll be a little farther ahead than we are, which is great because we'll get to kind of make sure our plan kind of keeps in line with that. So yes, we try as much as possible to transmit the themes over and over again. And even sometimes if we get a comment that we hadn't heard before, that opens up a whole new door of, oh, maybe there's more people who care about that and we just haven't met them yet. So yes,
So let's take about 5 or 10 more minutes worth of questions if there are that many. I wanted to ask this.
Actually, Alan, there is a question about density in the chat from a while back. Do you mind if I respond?
No, please do.
So there was a question that asked if the major goal of the process is to increase housing density to cover the expected increase in population. So I'll just say that there definitely is a housing crisis, as has been widely publicized in this region, not just Montgomery County, but in the DMV as a whole. As there's a body of coordination between the government's COG, right? That's the Council of Governments, where representatives of all the DC area governments get together and discuss hopefully how to coordinate things to some degree. So they did identify, I think already 2 years ago, the area is expected to grow a certain amount, and every jurisdiction kind of committed to providing X number of housing units by a certain date. So Montgomery County did promise some of those, and clearly there's going to be pressure on the downtown areas to deliver a lot of those. And again, there are draft recommendations that are being developed now for the Thrive 2050 plan that reinforce the idea that more people should be near transit as a broad approach, which is actually an approach that Montgomery County has kind of always been following, but that is kind of a broad approach. So certainly that's a reason to look at density and housing in this area. However, something that we will be noting again in existing conditions analysis, downtown Silver Spring, while it has grown tremendously in the last decade in particular, has plenty of capacity for future growth in the downtown core. There are a ton of underutilized sites, and I'm not even talking about saying, well, we think you could fit more on that site. I mean, even given the zoning that's there today, that was proposed in 2000, there are many sites that haven't even approached their development capacity at all. There's millions and millions of square feet of development that has not been realized. So what we're going to do in this plan is figure out, why, right? Why are there so many underutilized sites? Are they zoned correctly? Even maybe that kind of, maybe what's proposed right now isn't the appropriate zoning for this site for a number of reasons, and we have to figure that out. That's something that we're going to be testing out. Right now we've identified all the sites that are underutilized, and there's only a handful of sites that really got developed beyond what their zoning allows through the various methods that you can do that. So we're not in a situation where we're in a plan area that is like maxed out and we have to figure out where the density is going to come from. The opportunity for that density is already here. It's been here for 20 years and it hasn't been fully built out. So the question is more, how should that density be shaped? And what kinds of housing is appropriate in this plan area? And so when people say like, well, then why would we be looking at the neighborhoods and why would we be talking about increasing density there? It's really a conversation about housing diversity in terms of type and affordability. And that it all goes to the same conversation of we have the capacity here, but is it loaded onto the right parcels in a way that's going to make it developable, in a way that's going to create the environment that we all want for Silver Spring? Do we need to adjust things so that it meets the vision that we set? And again, that goes to the, so yes, of course, we're going to accommodate, we have to take into account more housing. But the question is, that doesn't necessarily mean taller buildings than we have now. It doesn't, that's not a given in Silver Spring particularly.
That's why I was a little confused so I agree with you in your analysis where there's tens of thousands of available housing units in the pipeline that haven't been developed over the course of the last 20 years. But there was a recommendation to get rid of the housing moratorium as it affected school capacity, because people said that it affected development, but there's a lot of potential development, at least in downtown Silver Spring. Not to answer that question, that was just an aside. I don't really want you to have to do that.
Okay.
I wanted to ask a question about the pandemic, and it's clear that this one has set us back on our heels, that people are teleworking, there's not as much traffic, that kids are not going to school, they're learning from home. There's just as likely to be some other kind of virus 5 years from now, which changes development patterns and practices. Is your report going to be a sort of back to normal report, as well as have sort of a contingency plan if this is the new normal? Is there going to be a new normal analysis that goes with the sector plan?
I think we haven't quite figured that out yet. I think it's an excellent question. I think it's something that we all have to discuss together as we go through visioning. I think Riamberto said it earlier, that it may be about flexibility. And I suspect that is going to be a goal of ours, to somehow write a plan that is flexible enough to accommodate a variety of possible outcomes. I think, and that's what I sort of mean about when we say keeping the short term in mind, in addition to the long term. We're going to make a long-term vision, but there may be multiple ways to get there, or there may be, different options of how that vision can be realized. We've been having conversations about, we've had a lot of interesting conversations with people who own businesses in Silver Spring, and I mean people who were sort of renting office space, and whether they're going to come back to that office space. And some people are dying to come back, and some people think they're never coming back. And those are really interesting conversations, because they go to the idea of like, what's the future of, Silver Spring's not the only place like this in the country. So it goes to like a really much broader question, but we have to address it here. And that is something that we certainly don't know the answer to yet. I think the good thing is that we have a really lot of time for this plan. And the other thing I want to point out to everybody is that, and actually, we just talked about the green space plan before. It's a great example. We do a sector plan, right? We do our best. We make our best effort along with everybody who partners with us, and we come up with a vision, and we write the recommendations, and it gets approved. And then 5 or 10 years in, either something else happens, or it becomes obvious that there's one or two things that we really missed the mark on. we didn't predict it appropriately. You know, we didn't guess right. And then the opportunity is always there, and the plan department has done this, as in the green space plan, to say, wait a second, this isn't working exactly the way we thought it was going to work. Let's put something else on our own work plan where we can go in and sort of take another look at this aspect of it. That's one thing that happens. It's happened before. Another thing that sometimes happens is sector plans. Part of the recommendations can actually be recommendations for future or studies of various topics. And I actually am completely sure that this plan is going to have recommendations of that sort in some way, because we are planning during a time of such, uncertainty, that no matter what we do, there are going to be some things we don't anticipate. I mean, but at the same time, I want to try and anticipate some things. And so I would not be surprised at the end, we have something that either says, if X and Y happens, it's going to be a good idea to study Z and A. And that's okay if we do that. I mean, that's what planning is about. You try and anticipate, but you also try and leave flexibility. And sometimes flexibility is saying, we recommend that this and this be studied if this and this happen. And so I think, Alan, that kind of goes to what, yes, I think sometimes we do that. We have the ability to write the plan that Silver Spring needs. And if that's the plan that it needs, if it needs, then we do that. And if things need to be revisited in 10 years, then we've done that before, we can do it again.
And do the plan take into account sort of alternate economic forecasts about whether we're going to muddle along, and grow at 3%, or we're going to grow at 6%, or we're going to grow at -2%?
We test different scenarios, certainly, and I think this is such a, I think we'd have to ask my economic development team. I don't even think they know what they're going to do with the pandemic yet. We've been gathering information about what life was like in Silver Spring pre-COVID from an economic perspective and what it's like now, so that we have those two things to look at. And then the conversation of where do we want it to be and what do we think are some of the likely ways we can get us there is going to be part of the next year of work. But I do think that the good thing is, with having sort of a lot of time to do this in, is that I think by the time we're getting closer to those draft recommendations, I think we collectively will be in a different place regarding the pandemic. We might have some sense of what what the aftermath looks like more than we do right now, when we're still in the thick of it. From everything we're hearing, right? We by next year at this time, we'll hopefully things will look different, and we'll know a lot more, and we'll also have we'll have even more data to look back on. We even already have more data than we did, when we started this plan, right? We started this plan 2 weeks into the pandemic. Even now, we've got months and months of sort of pandemic data about Silver Spring to look at, and we'll have even more 6 months out, and we're just
let me bring this to
adjust that.
Let me bring it to a conclusion and ask you this: you've got 2 listening sessions scheduled for next week.
Yeah.
The 9th and the 13th.
The 8th and the 14th.
8th and the 14th. That was close. The 8th and the 14th. What do you expect to? How big do you expect those groups, and what do you expect to hear? The same kind of thing that you heard from us?
I'll say I don't know what we expect to hear, but I think we've got I don't have it open anymore. We've had the registration up for a while. I think the earliest session already has to be about 30 or so people registered, but we just put out another push. So I assume usually it's in the days before the session, people get reminded and then they register. Typically we've had about 40 people attend each time we've done it. And then we split into 6 or 7 groups. We have, it depends who the folks are in the in the breakout groups and what issues they bring. I mean, we usually talk a lot about the business situation, the economy in Silver Spring. We talk a lot about the environment. We talk a lot about this question of housing density. You name it. We've had the conversations have run the gamut. That's why it's so fun. And that's why we're doing one more round. It'll be the we did 3 and then 2, and now we're doing 2 again. So what, that's 7. We'll have done 7 of these in addition to all these other smaller sessions like this one right now, which we've been doing almost like 2 a week like this for the past at least 3 or 4 months. So, you know, I encourage people to check the website and see how we're doing in terms of those comments. There's already, you can download now a PDF of all the comments from the first 2 rounds of listening sessions. They're up there. And sort of some highlighted, like, you know, highlights that are up there. And we'll update that all after these next 2 that are coming up. So if you were here, you really don't need to come to the listening session. It's going to be a similar conversation unless you're interested to hear what folks say who aren't from Park Hills, and you'll be in a group with other people from other neighborhoods. And if that's appealing, then I invite people to come.
Well, we want to thank you for coming out on this Thursday night, all of you. I know that's a big allocation of staff time, but we really do appreciate it. I think it's really important. Our community, almost more than others, has been following these issues very carefully because of the, you know, the purple line coming through the neighborhood over the last 15 years. So we have a lot of subject matter experts on transit and housing, on the environment, on planning, on invasive species. We've got lots of experts in the neighborhood. So thank you so much. I'm sure some people will be joining the listening sessions and we'll be paying close attention to this process. So Melissa, we'll be looking forward to seeing you
Okay.
on the screen in the not too distant future, letting us know what's going on.
Yes, definitely.
Reach out to us whenever if you need to get some information. I've been sharing the link to the plan page on the MNC PPC website, so people
Okay.
have the link to that.
Thank you. And you
Great,
will
thank
definitely
you.
be hearing from us.
I know we will.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, when we
You
get
guys-
into, we will be presenting, we'll say that the next time we're probably going to like blast everyone with information is the end of January or beginning of February. I'm not quite sure exactly yet. We will be coming to the community before we go to the planning board with our existing conditions findings. So, and that is really a summary of the work we've done in terms of the data gathering over the past few months. And so we will be, you know, we will share that certainly with the newsletter, but also with all the civic associations and everybody who's basically signed up to be engaged with us so far. And I'm pretty sure we'll try and have more than one opportunity to tune in to that, but I'm also sure we're going to put the video on our website. So there'll be a lot of ways to catch up with all the work we've done. And then we'll have a lot of opportunities to participate in 2021. And a lot of them will be sort of topic focused. So the subject matter experts should definitely join us and feel right at home.
Well, we appreciate it. So thank you guys so much, and have a happy holiday. Stay safe, wear a mask.
Too.
Yes, you
Okay.
too.
Thank you.
Thank you all.
And to all of you,
Bye.
thank you so much.
Sure, thank you
Night.
guys.
Yeah, good night.
So neighbors, stay here for a couple minutes because I did a PowerPoint. And you know, my PowerPoints are really good. If I just say so myself. You guys see that?
No. Yes.
Yes? Good. All right, I was going to do it before they came. So here's our December 3rd meeting. And if this is our agenda. And so we're going to skip down to the community business piece right here. I just wanted to recall that over the course of the last couple of months, our last meeting was with Tom Hucker. Remember that back in September. Now Tom is the president of the Montgomery County Council. So we have a friend. We always had a friend at the county council, but now we have a friend who's the president of the Montgomery County Council. October, our big activity was the arrival of the Lego truck. And that was a pretty successful event. We invited neighbors from Seven Oaks and East Silver Spring and some of the other adjacent communities. We had about 400 people go to the truck, socially distant. At the same time, we had an ice cream truck, which I don't have a picture of the ice cream truck, but so that was a big deal. We had Halloween, and I guess everybody, the Fleetwoods had their Halloween, Mansfield had their Halloween. I'm thinking Deerfield had its Halloween. and it was socially distant. In this is, I think, September and October. In September, Tina and I participated in a walking tour with the people from the Maryland Transit Administration. Tom Hucker is there, David Moon was there, Lori Charcuti, and a delegate was there. And we walked from the Manchester station up to Silver Spring International School, checking out what needed to be improved on Wayne Avenue before the Purple Line contractor left. Subsequently, we attended the CAT meeting, the Community Advisory Team meeting for the Purple Line, and some of you were on that call. That was with the Purple Line Executive Director and the MTA Administrator, I think. In November, Chris Richardson did, as he always does and has done for the last 10 years or so, organize a creek cleanup of Sligo. He's always able to find some Boy Scouts and some Girl Scouts and people who have church projects to come down and help clean up Sligo. So it looks good. It had to be done a little bit differently because of the social distancing and the mask wearing. Want to just talk a minute about the COVID-19. Everybody on this call is smart, so I don't really have to spend any time on this. But countywide, statewide, nationally, the coronavirus is out of control. They don't even contact trace in some places because everybody's got it. Our numbers have been going in the wrong direction over the course of the last 6 weeks or so. And so the county executive and the health officer came down with new stricter regulations about how many people can be inside. 10 is the max. They want you to wear a mask outside when you think you're going to be in contact with somebody who's going to be less than 6 feet away. There was some confusion because it said wear a mask when you're outdoors, but it really didn't make any sense that if you were by yourself in a field that you had to wear a mask, so they clarified that. This is a look at the county's cases of coronavirus. And while we're not at the top, we're not at the bottom either. We're right in the middle where this arrow is. And the trends are going up even in 2009-10. So wear a mask. I feel, I've always been really nervous about this pandemic and this administration, and my worst fears have been realized. So we have to be careful even in this county. Testing, the county said in a press release 3 weeks ago, they want everybody to get tested. And so I went to a test on the 19th of November, the Silver Spring Civic building. It was the sort of the benign nasal swab test, but I haven't gotten my results back yet. So they're supposed to be 3 to 5. They told me 3 to 5 days, and today was day 14. And so I'm wondering whether or not, the whole testing regime is just bogus, because if you're not getting your testing results back for 2 or 3 weeks, it almost means it's almost meaningless. So, but the testing is free. You can get it at the Silver Spring Civic building. Community business. I have 2 screens on here. Purple Line, as you all know, State of Maryland reached a court settlement with the Purple Line contractor Floor, who pulled out, and they're looking for a new lead contractor. On Wayne Avenue, you can see they've cleaned it out quite a bit. And right now those crews out there are relocating utilities. Something's over here, somebody's in the chat. And we were able to call the principals at Sims and the elementary school, and they cleaned up the property pretty well, so good for them. On Dale Drive, you've seen there's a lot of construction there recently. They're trying to relocate gas lines. We had hoped that they were going to pave the streets before winter, but they're not. So the streets are going to stay in these conditions until spring. So that's bad news. And then I think all of you know that they announced yesterday that they were going to close Mrs. K's. It's like the first time it's been available to new ownership in 90 years. And so people are freaked out about that. And then, of course, you know, the Washington Rebels had to move for whatever reason. Moving on, I really do have another slide here. But you're going to be, if you don't see it, you're going to be lucky because the last one says that, oh, there we go. We're looking for volunteers to do everything. So I'm always asking for more volunteers. So if anybody wants to, you know, Tina, you're still our Purple Line person. We're still looking for people to take sort of responsibility for these issue areas so they can keep track of development and let the neighborhood know what's going on. Parks, trees, transit, pedestrian safety, land use and planning, social media, and hospitality. All the other neighborhoods have got hospitality social committees, and we do not, and we should have one. Last but not least, we haven't asked for dues in a long time. Partly it's my fault for not really focusing on it when we should have done it in September. We're going to send around a note to everybody to pay dues. The executive committee thought it made sense to reduce the dues from $15 to $10 because we're in the midst of a pandemic. But we do use the money that we get to, you know, pay for the website, to pay for the Zoom, and to pay for memberships and organizations and various special events. So stay tuned for that. So that's what I wanted to share on my PowerPoint. Anybody have any comments or questions for the good of the order? We're down to 13 people now. Don, tell us what's going on with the advisory group. And you're muted.
Okay, let me get myself off of mute. Yes. For those of you who don't know, the Silver Spring Advisory Board is made up of 18 people from basically the regional area, the Silver Spring Regional Center that's run by Rumberto. And so we work with Rumberto to provide information and advice to the county council and the county executive. And we meet twice a month. On the second Monday and the fourth Monday of each month. Currently, of course, we're meeting online. If you take a look at that newsletter, that annoying newsletter that I send out periodically, which I get from Umberto, it has information about how to log into the meetings. The last meeting we had was 2 weeks ago, or last week rather, was our, we have a committee meeting on the fourth. The whole advisory board meets on the second Monday, and then there's 3 standing committees that meet on the fourth Monday. And we were talking about the county's shared street initiative, which, you know, particularly in our neighborhood, Grove Avenue is the most widely recognized example of that. And that's been happening around the county. And we were talking with people from WABA and DOT and the Pedestrian, Bicycle, and Traffic Safety Advisory Committee on what people want to see with shared streets. Our next meeting will be December 14th, a week from Monday, 7 o'clock. And we will be having our annual meeting with the D18 and D20 legislators. And they'll be telling us about what they're going to be up to. And we do that every year. I just want to step into one other area on the tree subject, which was pretty involved in terms of tonight's presentation, and that the county does have a lot of programs that can get you connected with a tree, but you need to know kind of where to look. So if people want more information about that, we did a program on it for the advisory board, and I can give people more information on that. Because if you want a tree on your curb, that's a street tree, that's the Department of Transportation. If you want a tree in your backyard, that's environmental. It's a different, that's the Montgomery Trees from Montgomery. It's a different program. But the county does do both. And, you know, we can't count on just, you know, the street trees alone is not enough to rebuild the whole canopy. You need trees in your yard too. So,
Thank you, Don. Yeah, we've been pushing trees. So that program you're talking about is called Tree Montgomery. And the county will, they will plant a tree in your front yard, in your backyard. You can pick the type of tree you want, and the county will take care of it for 2 years. They will make sure it's watered, they will make sure it's pruned, and it's free. And more people should be taking advantage of that. the other thing that's a burn to my saddle is that county could do a lot more about invasive vines, because we've got all these mature trees and some of them are going down to invasive vines, particularly English ivy. So we already have some trees, but they're endangered by these vines. And of course, nobody knows more about that than Jim Anderson. And he is our subject matter expert on that subject. Do you want to say anything about that, Jim? About that? You're muted.
Yeah, actually, where are most of these trees? In people's yards? I know I've got a neighbor that has several of them.
Lots of them are in people's yards, but as I walk the dog walk down the street, those they're not street trees. They're right in somebody's front yard. They might be in the right of way, but there's a lot of them.
Yeah, because actually, Friends of Sligo Creek, a number of years ago, maybe close to 15 years or so ago, put out a little postcard on how to control that. And I'll see if we've got some more that we can give to people. If not, I'll make sure we get something on our website.
That'll be good. We can send out some information about that.
Yeah.
So,
because it's pretty easy to control. You just cut the vine at the base of the tree, and everything above it dies out because it can't get water.
yes, you can see when you walk through a park, the county parks, or you drive down a highway, you can see how invasive the spread is. And so I want to thank Gary Klauber for providing information that if you didn't get your test results, there is a county number you can call to try to shake out that information from them. So,
and I had another test today, and they're saying 5 days. Now, how realistic that is, who knows?
right, not very realistic. The county executive and the health officer had a press conference yesterday, as they do every Wednesday at noon or 12:30, and they admitted finally that the tests are really backed up because everybody got a test before Thanksgiving. They got a test after. They told everybody to get one for free. And so tens of thousands of people went to get tests, and they don't have the bandwidth to get the test, do the results, and then get them back to you. So I think it's an issue. So you guys be careful out there.
I would just to say on that, I think I got mine at the Silver Spring Civic Center the same day you did, 19. I didn't see you there, but the 19th. And when it didn't come back, I called them. There's this number. Somebody came right on and looked it up. So the results were there. And they said that just because of so many people taking the tests, they were backed up. And I still haven't gotten the official test, but they told me. So if you really want, there's a phone number that was on the paperwork they gave you.
Well, Gary just gave it because I didn't remember seeing it on the paperwork that I just got, because I took it again at the Good Hope Recreational Center, which is up New Hampshire Avenue. And that was last Thursday. So that's been a week already. And I have
240-777-1755, 7 days a week from 8 a.m. to 6 p.m.
Okay, I'll call tomorrow morning and see. So everybody be careful out there. And we have lots of new people moving into the neighborhood. If you see somebody new, tell them to sign up for the listserv so they can stay in touch with what's going on, or join the Facebook page. Because that's how we're going to get information out to the community. So we only do these meetings 4 times a year. September, December, February, and May. So if anything else comes up, just let us know. And if there's no other observations, I entertain a motion to adjourn.
Second.
It's been first and second, and all those in favor say aye.
Aye. Good night.
All right, see you guys.
Okay, thank you, Al.
Bye, Cheryl. Bye, Nina. Bye, Maren.
Wow. Such a